Hello, this is Sarah with Posh Pooch Designs, and today's video I'm going to show you how to make these fun and festive dog collars. Now these are perfect for any size cat, dog, bunny, goat, any size animal, and the pattern is completely adjustable, and we'll get into that more when we get started with the pattern. But what you're going to need are some jingle bells. And I found this bag here of different color ones, red, green, and silver, at Hobby Lobby. But you know, I've even seen these at Dollar Tree, so you can find these anywhere. You're also going to need some yarn. And for our demonstration, and also for these, I used this, I love this yarn in Sparkle because I had it on hand, which is a worsted weight 4. And you can use any worsted weight 4 for these collars. Max is jingling his back there. Okay, we're going to be stitching today with our H hook. And you're also going to need a needle for sewing on your bells and also for weaving in your ends. And of course, a pair of scissors. Now this is a free pattern on my blog, and I'll put that link in the notes underneath the video. So here's our dog collar, and one neat thing about this is there's no buttons, Velcro, or snaps or anything. It's done with a tie, like this. Turn that over. And you can see this one's a little longer because Rosie's neck is just about 1 inch wider around than Maximo's. So grab you some jingle bells and some yarn, and let's get started. For today's demonstration, Max is still jingling back there. For today's demonstration, I'm going to be making a collar for an 8-inch dog neck. And the way we figure out how many chains we need is we multiply 3 chains per inch, which would be 24 inches because I'm making an 8-inch neck, and then we add 1 chain. So I need to chain 25 chains. And we're going to be starting in the center of our collar. We'll be doing the center portion and then the outside trim. So I need to chain 25 chains. So I chained my 25 chains. And no matter what size that you make, the rest of the things, the rest of the stitches, the rest of the techniques, and the way you do it is exactly the same, no matter what size. The only difference is you'll have more stitches. Your stitch count will be different. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip our first chain right here, and we're going to begin stitching in our second chain. And we're going to place 2 single crochets in the second chain from the hook. So we'll put our hook in and grab up that loop, 2 loops on our hook, yarn over and go through both of those. And we'll do that again only in the first stitch. And then we'll single crochet in each chain across. And we'll do this until we reach the last chain. And then the last chain, we're going to place 2 single crochets. So 1 crochet, single crochet stitch in each chain across until we reach the last chain. And in that last chain, we'll stitch 2 single crochets. So we stitched 2 single crochets in the second chain from the hook, and then we stitched 1 single crochet in each chain across until we reached our last chain. And in the last chain, we're going to stitch 2 single crochets. And now we're going to turn. And we're going to be working down those same chains, and this is called working in the opposite side or the other side of the chain. And what we're going to do is we're going to do exactly the same thing we did on this side. We're going to place 2 single crochets Move that string out of the way there, and we'll weave that in later in the first single crochet, or the first, I'm sorry, 2 single crochets in the first chain, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet in each chain across. And when we reach the last chain, we'll be stitching 2 single crochets in the last 2 chains. If you've never worked down the opposite or other side of the chain, this is a great project to practice that. So we've worked 2 double crochets in the top, and then we worked 1 single crochet in each stitch, working back down the opposite side of the chain, and now we're going to place 2 single crochets in the last single crochet. And we're going to join to the first single crochet, there we go, with a slip stitch. And that's the center portion of our collar. Of course, this one's for a bigger dog. The center portion of our collar. So now we're going to change colors. And I'm going to be using white for my edge on this one. There we go. So we're just going to clip that, because we want to do our chain 1 after our color change, because if we do it before, we end up with 1 green stitch showing. So we're going to place our white yarn, and remember, if you want to do this all one color, you certainly can. You can do this any colors that you want. You don't even have to do Christmas colors. If you just want a collar for your cat or dog that has bells on it, you could do it in any colors. It's a great way to know where they are in the house, isn't it? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to, oops, snug that down and chain 1. There we go. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to place 2 single crochets in the first stitch, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch across until we reach the end again. Whoa, my yarn just landed on the ground. Oh well. At least it landed up where I can still get the yarn out of it. Alrighty, so 1 single crochet in each single crochet across until we reach the end of this row. So we put 2 single crochets in the first stitch, then we single crocheted all the way across until we reach the last single crochet. And the way to know where you're at the right one is the last 2 single crochets on the end of the round, because it looks rounded there, is where we're going to be working. So we're going to place 2 single crochets in that last one on this row. 1, 2, and now we're going to make our tie. And so what we're going to do is we're going to chain 25, but that's a lot of chains because we don't want the tie too long. So since this is for an 8-inch dog collar, I am only going to chain 20. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And the way we make the tie is you just turn, you skip your first chain, and you begin slip stitching in the second chain from your hook. And you just slip stitch back down that chain, and that gives you a nice sturdy tie, but it's not too thick either, especially for small dogs. If you're making this for a bigger animal and you want the tie to be thicker, you can always do single crochets. I just like the slip stitches just because it makes a nice sturdy tie without being too bulky when you tie your bow. And also, if you're making it for a bigger dog and you want your tie to be longer, you certainly can make it longer. My thinking is I don't want the tie to be too long that it gets caught in their toenails or in their teeth, because I don't want that to get stuck. And we don't want dogs to eat yarn because it's not good for them. Alrighty. So now we're back up to the end. We're going to put a single crochet all the way up, and then we're going to go in that next stitch and we're going to stitch 2 single crochets. 1, 2. And there's our first tie. And now we're going to single crochet all the way back down here. We're going to put 2 single crochets and then we'll make our second tie. So 1 single crochet in each single crochet across. So we've did our 2 single crochets. We went all the way down stitching single crochets. Now we're to the last stitch up here, and we're going to stitch 2 single crochets. 1, 2, and then we're going to repeat what we did for this tie. We're going to chain 20 because this is a smaller one. 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we've chained 20. Again, I'm going to skip the first stitch and slip stitch in that next stitch and slip stitch back down my chain. So I slip stitched back down my chain for my second tie, and the last thing I need to do is join to the top of that first single crochet and tie off. Now I need to take a minute and weave in my ends. So I'm going to flip it over to the back and get those ends all tidied up, and then I'm going to show you how to add your jingle bells. Alrighty there, I took a minute. I tidied up my back and my front, making sure all my strings were all woven in with my yarn. And I decided that since this is a much smaller collar, I'm only going to use these 3 bells. I'm going to put one of each color on my dog collar. And what you're going to need to do is to thread your needle with about maybe 18 to 24 inches, depending on how many bells you're going to add, with the color of the yarn that you used on the center portion. And then you just need to decide where you want to put them. I'm going to put mine about like this because I kind of like that. Smaller dog, it doesn't need as many bells. And so I'm going to start with the green one. And what I do, I'll mark that with my finger. You can mark it with a pin if you want to. As I go in the back, in the center, I pull my yarn up through, and I make a loop in the yarn and sew 1 stitch like that. Then I grab the bell that I'm going to use and I go through the back and I stitch it through like this, and I go ahead and do it again. If I don't want to go through that yarn, snag that up. Like that. Make sure it's on there nice and snug because I don't want my dog to bite it off. Funny story, my Rosie is totally afraid of these bells. Alright, then I turn it over. I make another loop just to make sure that yarn's not going to come out. And then I look on the front and I decide where I want my next bell. I'm going to put it about right here. So what I'm going to do is I put my finger like this and go to the back, and I go through these stitches like this, and I come up where I want my bell. Make a loop like I did on the first one, 1 stitch. Grab my next bell and do the same thing. I just go through the yarn. I go through the bell again. And if you want to do it more times, you feel more comfortable that your bell's not going to come off, you can do it as many times as you want to. Snug that down. Make another loop. And you do that all the way across, deciding on where you want your bells. Now, there is another technique that you can do where you slide all your bells on first, and then you push them as you crochet. I have tried that. The thing about bells is they have this rough edge right here. Let me move that over here where you can see it better. They all seem to have this rough edge. And when I was crocheting and tried to move the bells across, it really snagged up and sometimes broke the yarn. And that's why I've chosen to sew the bells on separately. And if you can find some bells that don't have that rough edge, you can certainly do it that way. I just like doing it this way because I can decide afterwards how many bells I want, you know. But this works great. And if you use the color of yarn that's the same as the center of your collar, it works out great. And we're just going to make some stitches back here, make sure that's not going to come out. No, we don't want to lose our bells. And we'll cut that off. And we'll probably need to take a second and weave in that other edge. And you can see it's off a little bit, so I probably need to add another bell there. So I think I will. So that's how you make our collars. This one needs another bell. Let me make sure I got a silver one, because we definitely want to put a silver one on there. There we go. Now it's nice and even. But that's how we make our Jingle Bell Dog collars. Really simple, really easy to make, and they're a lot of fun too, because if you want to take a family picture with your pet, whether it be a goat or a horse, you can make one of these without having to wrestle them to the ground to put on a Christmas sweater. So I'm going to sew that last bell on, and you go grab you some yarn and make a bunch of these. They also make great gifts.